This is a follow up to our summer series where we looked at 30 or so players that were long shot kind of players, maybe guys we were hopefuls for the NFL draft. This is a follow up to say, okay, how did they do this season? The season has happened. Did the things pan out that we were looking for? Did they grow in the way we expected, or did they regress? So this is going to look at each of those players and where they are today as we head toward NFL draft season as the college football season winds down. So let's start with the wide receivers. The wide receiver that stood out this year the most, Skylar Bell, wide receiver at UConn, was very close to a triple crown season. May have had it if he competed in the bowl game. He played one snap or one series and checked out. But he had over 100 catches, nearly over double what he had the year before, 1,200 plus yards. Really shined this year, headed to the Senior Bowl. Great year for Skylar Bell. Ted Hurst also headed to the Senior Bowl, had a 1,000-yard season at Georgia State, all Sun Belt Conference wide receiver. Great year, Georgia State for Ted Hurst. One of the things we wanted to see was more consistency, and I think he found that this year for the Panthers. Lewis Bond had a career year at Boston College, nearly 1,000 yards, set the all-time receptions record up there at Chestnut Hill, 993 yards on the season for Lewis Bond, and I think he improved significantly on what we were expecting coming into the season. Josh Cameron at Baylor improved in all areas. Catches went up, yards went up, touchdowns were down by one. The one area where he really did not improve this year necessarily was on the punt return side. His average punt per punt return was down, but then again, Baylor's defense wasn't stopping anybody, so he didn't get as many opportunities for punt returns this year anyway. But he played very well as a wide receiver and has parlayed that into a Senior Bowl invite. Ian Strong had a very strong start to the season. His numbers were all up this year, but he's decided to go back to school, and he's transferred from Rutgers over to Cal, going to play with Jaron Kiave Sangopolatele and the Golden Bears on the other coast. So looking forward to a strong senior season from him, maybe improve his draft stock even more. Griffin Wilde had a very strong transfer from the FCS into the Big Ten, playing at Northwestern, going from one of the best teams at the FCS level to one of the worst teams, well, maybe one of the lower profile teams in the P4. Northwestern had a pretty good season, 6-6, but he caught the same 71 passes, just 880 yards this year, but on a team that had that was less competitive in some games than he was the 2 years before with the Jackrabbits. So a strong showing this year. Everything I've seen suggests he's probably going back to school. So look forward to a good senior season from Griffin Wilde, and we'll see what that does for his draft stock next year. Kevin Coleman, numbers dipped a little bit this year. The quarterback play at Mizzou was not good. Bo Pribula got hurt, and they were cycling through some guys that were not helpful to Kevin Coleman's draft stock. Still a relatively productive year, 732 yards, less than he did last year at Mississippi State, but still a good season, and I think we'll see him on the All-Star game circuit and at the Combine, and I think we'll see him probably called on day 3 of the draft. Cam Vaughn, regression statistically at West Virginia, coming from Jacksonville State. Again, the quarterback play was not there. They had a quarterback at the start of the year who looked like he might have it, and they ended the year with a quarterback who was playing okay in Scotty Fox, but the numbers just weren't there for Cam Vaughn. If you watch him in the games, he was getting open. He was beating defensive backs easily. You could see the growth as a player. It just wasn't reflected statistically because the team system was not there. It sounds like he left there under not great circumstances. Something with him and the coach, maybe with the system. I don't know. The last I saw, he was looking at Georgia and Miami and Florida. So seems like he's got a transfer up opportunity. Other programs are seeing possibilities there with him. So we'll hear more from Cam Vaughn next year. Adrian Norton did not have the year I expected him to have at Marshall. They really could have used him more this year. Only 27 catches for 363 yards. But the thing was, Marshall didn't get him involved until the last couple weeks of the season. He had 20 of these catches in the last 2 games, or 13 of these catches or something like that in the last 2 games of the season. So he's going back to Marshall again. Hopefully the coaches now know what they have. If you watch those last 2 games, especially the last game before the bowl game, the last regular season game. You really see him put it all on display. And hopefully the Thundering Herd now realize they have a great receiver out there, and they get him the ball next year. Javon Tracy, I hear he's going back to Minnesota next year as well. Did not have a great season for the Gophers this year. That passing offense was a little lower volume this year than what he had the previous 2 years at Miami, Ohio, and he wasn't used downfield as much. It was a lot more schemed touches for him, getting the ball on low A dot. So hopefully next year he can move up to that number one receiver spot if he's going to continue to progress. But this year it did not go the way his trajectory had been trending, transferring up. Devontae Ross, similar situation, had been on an upward trajectory at Troy, and then this year at Penn State, they didn't really utilize him at all until they got toward the end of the season. Again, I don't know what they were thinking. They were utilizing Trevor Pena in a lot of the ways that I would expect him to have used Devontae Ross, and they kind of reversed their roles toward the end of the season and saw both guys start to play a little better. So, but he's used his 4 years. I don't think he's got another year of eligibility, so he's going to be in the draft. Hard to know exactly what to expect here. He was a good deep threat, and some of the things you saw at Troy just didn't translate. Maybe it's just that level of competition going up and he wasn't prepared, but it didn't seem that way when he was on the field. It seemed like he could get open, and a lot of the things you saw at Troy were happening at Penn State. He just wasn't involved in the offense. DT Sheffield, wide receiver who played at Rutgers this year, has been bouncing around. He was really kind of the third receiver this year on this Rutgers team. And ironically, he would have been great on that North Texas team this year with the way they were playing offense. He would have been a perfect complement to that team. But on this Rutgers team, he was kind of the third banana behind Ian Strong and KJ Duff. And they had a great running game this year with Antoine Raymond as well. So he kind of got lost in the shuffle. But again, 6-year player. I don't know if it's going to happen for DT Sheffield. He's going to need a great pre-draft process to really start climbing draft boards. Dane Key did not have a great year at Nebraska. Hard to fault him. Really, they had just all kind of problems with the offensive line. The quarterback didn't have any time. He was getting sacked constantly, and as a result, the receivers couldn't make plays because they weren't getting opportunities. So just a lost season this year for Dane Key. The numbers were all down across the board, and unfortunately, the transfer just didn't work out, leaving Kentucky. That Kentucky team this year was not bad. They didn't win a lot of games, but they were in more games than you might guess from the record that they had. But Dane Key, his college career seems like it might be over, probably over unless there's an eligibility thing, and that's probably not the way he wanted to go out. Jalen Moss at Arizona State didn't play in all the games, had some injury stuff. When he did play, he played okay, had a great bowl game appearance, and it seems like he'll be back at Arizona State next year. They've got a bunch of transfers coming in as well, so he might have to fight for a spot again, but the talent is there. It didn't translate to production this year. Dealt with injuries during camp, then was out of the rotation and so forth, so just kind of a lost season for Jalen Moss. Hudson Clement had an okay year going from West Virginia to Illinois. The numbers weren't as good. The production was kind of inconsistent game to game. And really, Hank Beatty was the number one receiver there on that team as a slot receiver. It seems like Hudson Clement will be back next year. So maybe better days are ahead if all works out. But this year, he just wasn't the talent. The ascension that we saw happening in the last couple of years at West Virginia did not translate at Illinois this year. And then Terrell Davis, the last receiver, transferred up from D2. My goodness, the quarterback shuffle at Oklahoma State this year was horrendous. They were cycling through 5 different quarterbacks and coming back around to guys that had gotten benched, and he just never really got a chance to get going this year. Unfortunately, hopefully he got paid transferring up. It's going to be a hard road for him in terms of the NFL draft with the way this year went. But I'm rooting for him because he's a talented player and the opportunity just wasn't there with the Cowboys this year. The coach got fired and all that. Okay, now let's move over to the running backs. That's all the wide receivers. So running back that really has improved his stock this year, Roman Hemby, running back at Indiana, transferred in from Maryland, over 1,000 yards now with the playoff games. Caught 15 passes. So the pass catching was really a trademark at Maryland. Not as much of that this year. They're more downfield passing with their receivers. And Hemby has been getting more carries and doing a great job with it, and the lead back on that team that's one win away from a national championship now. And this has been a great spotlight for him, to be in front of the national audience and everyone else getting to see him in high leverage big games. That's part of why he transferred from Maryland to Indiana, and I think it's working out really well for him, and I think we'll see his name called earlier than it might have been if he had stayed at Maryland this year, transferring to Indiana. Carson Hansen improved in all areas this year as a running back at Iowa State. The offense wasn't as good this year without those NFL caliber receivers, but he still had 952 yards, which is 200 more than he had the year before. Not as many touchdowns, just with the change in the offensive environment. But he improved in his catches and his rushing yards and his receiving yards, and he has decided to go back to school. The coach at Iowa State is now the coach at Penn State, and Carson Hansen's also transferred to Penn State. You know, they've got Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen graduating out, so he's got a backfield that he can walk into, and there's an opportunity there for him to step into a lead role if he continues to show growth and improvement there with his coach. Cam Edwards crossed the 1,000-yard mark, 1,200 yards, in fact, this year, 15 touchdowns, big year for him. As he closed out his career at UConn, he's decided to transfer to Michigan State as a grad transfer for his final year of eligibility. Improved in every area this year, 15 touchdowns on that UConn team that won 9 games. Very great regular season. He was part of that between him and Skylar Bell. That offense was really humming this year, and a big growth year for Edwards, so it'll be exciting to see what he can do in the Big Ten, transferring up to play for the Spartans at Michigan State. Julius Luffridge had a good year, transferring up in the FCS from Fordham to South Dakota State. He's now got 3,000-yard seasons, almost 4,000-yard seasons. He had 929 as a freshman. A guy who's got 4,000 career yards in college. I think he'll have an opportunity in the pre-draft process to show some people what he can do. I don't know. He's not a player who was the best running back at the FCS level at any point, but he continued to be productive, and he moved up a level within the FCS to South Dakota State and continued to be productive this year, even as the quarterback got injured and the team kind of lost a couple of games there toward the end of the year. I like Luffridge. We'll see what happens with him. I don't know. But this year production was there and consistency was there. TJ Harden, one of the things I was hoping for him was sort of getting back to what he did in 2023 at UCLA, and the numbers are almost there. He's about 40 yards off as a receiver and a rusher, but 787 rushing yards, 9 touchdowns, caught 19 passes this year. A very good year for him overall. I think he stays in the day 3 pick range as a running back. Good showing this year. Not great, but I think he proved better than he did the year before. Desmond Reed, kind of a lost season for him. Injuries up and down this season. He had one great game against Florida State where he had 200 all-purpose yards. He caught 10 passes, and then he caught 6 passes against Notre Dame. But other than that, he was injured a lot. He only had 60 carries this year, only 600 all-purpose yards after having 1,500 last year. It's hard to know. 5'8" running back dealing with injuries. It's going to ding him a lot. Really fun, really great player when he's healthy and when he's on the field. But this year it just wasn't happening. So unfortunately, a lost season. He's got some work to do in the pre-draft process. Jamal Haynes, his numbers have just gone the wrong direction this year. It seems like he and his quarterback almost flipped their roles as rushers. Last year, he was 900-plus yards rushing. And this year he's got 500, and his quarterback last year was 500, and this year he was over 900. It kind of seemed like they were trying to stat pad for the quarterback to build a Heisman case, and Jamal Haynes suffered as a result of that. They also brought in another running back, Malachi Hosley, who was kind of like a body double for Jamal Haynes almost. And so between splitting the backfield there and the increased workload for the quarterback, the numbers just weren't there for Jamal Haynes this year. He's got some, again, he's another one who is going to have to show in the pre-draft process that he's, just continue to build his stock in the pre-draft process. He did increase his numbers as a pass catcher significantly this year, but the rushing numbers were not impressive. Damian Taylor, maybe one of the worst calls on our part this year. He got passed on the depth chart by Kewan Lacey, the transfer from Missouri to Ole Miss, as Taylor transferred from Troy to Ole Miss, and Kewan Lacey just turned out to be a player they couldn't take off the field. He was one of the leading rushers in the country, great pass protector. I think I saw Damian Taylor only played something like 60 snaps all season. So total whiff on the transfer there. I still like the player, and what I saw from Troy last year, this year he didn't see anything because he didn't get to play, unfortunately. George Pettaway, another one who got played off the field by a teammate. His teammate Wayne Knight had 1,700 all-purpose yards this year. He's transferred to UCLA. George Pettaway is coming back to JMU, so he may have a chance again next year to regain the lead role. But this year, like he scored a touchdown in the bowl game against Oregon, but other than that, only 43 touches all season. Just unfortunate that he didn't get the opportunity to get on the field and show what he could do this year. And then the last one is Jalen Cottrell, running back at D2 Central Oklahoma. His numbers were almost cut in half this year from last year, over half in terms of rushing yards. I haven't gotten to see as much of the Central Oklahoma stuff this year as I did last year, but I am curious to see what happened. The little bit I did see him on the field, he played fine. It's just the volume was way down this year, so I'm not sure what happened there with Central Oklahoma, but Jalen Cottrell, I don't think it's going to happen going to the NFL right now, just with the way things have gone. You really want to see a standout player coming out of D2, not an average season kind of like he had here, unfortunately, especially as a 6-year player. Moving on to tight ends now. Michael Trigg finally had a breakout year, 5th year this year playing at Baylor. A little more consistency. I think he led the country, maybe behind Malachi Tony. Him and Malachi Tony fighting for highlight plays this year. He probably led the country in one-handed catches, caught 50 passes this year, near 700 yards. Great overall season for Michael Trigg. I think he's going to the Senior Bowl, an opportunity to show even more for scouts and those who are looking to see, is he over some of the things that had held him back in the past? Because he's a great athlete. Everybody sees that, and they just wanted to see the consistency as on the field as a tight end. And this year, I think you started to see it. And if he can continue to grow and develop in that area, I think the sky's the limit for what this kid can do. Next one, we have Seydou Traore, the Englishman, a tight end at Mississippi State. His numbers this year are almost identical to what he did the year before, except he had 5 touchdowns instead of 1. Still hasn't gotten back to the heights of what he did in his breakout year at Arkansas State, but consistent production this year. And I think he's got a Shrine Bowl invite maybe. So he's probably on the list of tight ends that will get drafted and get an opportunity somewhere, but did not have a breakout year that we were hoping for him to have this year. John Michael Gillenborg is another one. Production was down overall. Dealt with some injuries. Didn't play all the games. All the talent is there. He's got a Senior Bowl invitation, so we're going to have to see him show up down in Mobile to really rebuild some of that draft stock that he had built up. The numbers are never going to be that high playing at Wyoming with that passing environment, but even so, he didn't get to show very much on the field this year. Same with Joe Royer, tight end at Cincinnati, who caught 50 passes last year, only 29 this year. The numbers were down across the board. Just wasn't involved in the passing offense as much. I don't know if it's the quarterback trying to push the ball down the field to the receivers, or maybe the coaches didn't trust. Who knows? I don't know what happened this year, but 29 catches is all he had. He only had more than 3 catches in 2 games this year. The season he had the year before did not seem to suggest that kind of regression would happen with the season he had this year. So just an unfortunate season for Joe Royer. Last player, Camden Overton Howard, another player who dealt with injuries. He transferred up to the FBS this year from Gardner Webb, where he had a good breakout year last year with 42 catches. This year he dealt with some injuries, didn't get to play as much. Had a couple of plays early in the season, and then as the season went on, really more blocking tight end than being used in the passing game. And Georgia State just fed the ball to Ted Hurst. So Camden Overton Howard didn't get a chance to do as much as a receiver this year playing at Georgia State. So just an unfortunate situation for him this year as well. Okay, so that's all the players. That's 32 guys. I think we had a couple of hits in there. Skylar Bell, Roman Hemby, Lewis Bond had a great year. Josh Cameron had a great year. Michael Trigg, really solid. And then there were some other guys who it just didn't work out, whether it was injuries or the offense or whatever. And coaches change and quarterbacks change and environments change. So that's where those guys went this year. And we'll see what happens as we go through the pre-draft process and moving on to the NFL draft coming up in a couple of months.